Welcome to Realizing Resilience, a podcast from the Connecticut Women's Consortium. We're not behavioral health professionals, but we're your gateway to real conversations with the experts. Each episode, we'll delve into the vast landscape of mental health, from personal stories to expert insights. Together, we'll bridge the gap between clinical expertise and personal experiences, connecting with diverse voices and perspectives. Join us for insightful conversations that demystify the world of mental health.
Dr. Nancy Grechko is a clinical psychologist and founder of Grechko Training and Consulting. Besides providing direct clinical care in her community, she also supports mental health practitioners and organizations through clinical supervision and consultation, as well as continuing education training. She is best known for making even the most complex clinical concepts accessible, so practitioners walk away with tangible tools to integrate in their practice. Dr. Grechko is passionate about supporting mental health practitioners do the work they love while taking care of their professional and personal needs. Welcome back to Realizing Resilience. My name is Alana. Unfortunately, Marissa can't be with us today, but I have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Nancy Grechko, PsyD. Thank you for joining me today, Dr. Grechko.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm so glad to talk to you today.
First and foremost, you're going to be presenting on low energy neurofeedback at our conference, the Holistic Healing Through Integrative Medicine Conference, which is on December 6th. Can you explain a little bit about what that is and what participants can expect from the presentation?
Sure. Low energy neurofeedback is, in short, amazing. It's a newer form of neurofeedback. And by newer, I mean 1990. Neurofeedback is not new to the mental health field and kind of brain optimization, but it's newer in the sense that it's cutting edge, it's revolutionary because we're not training the brain. Traditionally, neurofeedback has strict protocols where we are telling the brain what to do. We are training the brain. And low energy neurofeedback is actually the opposite. We are detraining the brain. We are unlearning and getting unstuck in those patterns that the brain has created to help us cope and survive life and the human existence. So low energy neurofeedback is so cool because it uses your unique brainwaves in real time. It's nervous system regulation in real time. And what's really cool about that is that, so there's an EEG component that takes your brainwaves and it mirrors it back. So it's not inputting any new data or information. It's mirroring back the information so your brain can see, okay, this is where I'm spending a lot of energy. Is this efficient? So that way the brain can regulate itself. It can auto-correct and make more of some and less of others. So this is where folks experience a sense of calm, regulation. It's really helpful for executive functioning, for mood, for a whole host of challenges that we can experience. So I love low energy neurofeedback. I would love to see it more widespread. And that's why I want to spread the word because it's a great tool as a standalone treatment, but also to support the amazing work that clinicians are doing in their practices.
This is such a cool and seemingly like promising thing. Like the fact that it's creating a reflection that you can't really get in another way. It's like, as much as you want to talk about it, you can't, I don't think, be that objective. So that's really interesting.
Yeah. And what I love is that you don't have to talk about it. So you essentially don't have to do anything. It's a very passive intervention. So this is great for trauma survivors, first responders, military veterans who don't have to talk through what they're struggling with. The brain can essentially heal itself. And during the conference, folks will learn more about low energy neurofeedback, about LENS. They'll be able to ask questions, get a sense of what a session would look like. And then I'm also doing a live demonstration.
I know, I heard Allie's going to be your victim.
She is. She volunteered.
No, she's so excited about it.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
so I had her fill out some questionnaires. So based on her unique physiology, I already know what I'm going to do. So it's actually a pretty simple, pretty quick process, and folks will be able to see, does Allie feel anything in the moment? Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. The real work, the real marvel is the next 48 hours after the intervention where, I can't wait to check in with Allie and say, what did you experience? What are you feeling? Because that's where the magic happens.
That's awesome. I'm so excited to see it and also hear from her how it went.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Can't wait.
So one of the other things that you are known for is making really complex clinical concepts more accessible. Notably, you've been doing a DBT series with us since October, I believe, and part 3 and 4 are happening in December and January. So when it comes to DBT, how do you break it down to ensure that it's easy to understand and to integrate into someone's practice? And what is the benefit really for clinicians in learning DBT in general?
Oh gosh, that's such an important question. What's the benefit of DBT skills? Honestly, I think DBT skills are life skills. I wish every person before they graduate high school goes through, the 4 DBT skills modules, because if you have emotions and if you ever experience challenges in your life and if you interact with other humans, DBT skills are for you. They're going to be really helpful. So that's fabulous because they're life skills. And the way that I teach, whether it's DBT, complex trauma, I essentially teach the way that I like to learn. So I am not a theory-based academic. I am a clinician, first and foremost, a clinician. So I want to know, what does this look like? What does this sound like? What is this going to look like in my therapy practice? For my client who just took 2 buses to get to session, not what it looks like for a research participant at your fancy academic research lab. So that's the way that I teach. I like to break things down because I don't take for granted that, folks know what these words mean or know what these concepts mean. I want to make sure that folks know what it actually looks like in the real world when they're showing up to session. So that's how I break it down. And essentially, again, just teaching the way that I learn. And it seems like others really enjoy that process and how they learn. I use real life examples. I use clinical examples. I'm often putting myself out there, my family out there in terms of, what we notice in life. And I find that others can relate to that. And DBT skills, as I mentioned, just in general, why they're so helpful to learn is because they're applicable to all humans. So anyone can benefit from learning DBT skills, but especially for practitioners to share with their clients. And you don't have to be a quote unquote DBT therapist. One of the things that I love about the work that I do is kind of demystifying DBT, because folks think that DBT is, very strict and, you have to follow a strict protocol. And that's not really how it is. It's very flexible. It's very integrative. And you can adapt the skills to be effective. You're using skillful means. That's the whole point. So, I really enjoy kind of demystifying that for folks and being flexible about how we incorporate DBT into our work without the pressure of being a quote unquote DBT therapist. And so for the next 2 months, we'll be learning emotion regulation and then interpersonal effectiveness skills, which are super helpful for folks to be able to identify their emotions, learn more about their emotions, not be overcome by their emotions, and then, our skills for managing our relationships and our interpersonal reactions. Those are going to be really, really helpful. So I'm excited for folks to experience that. And it's a 4-hour training. Each component is 4 hours, but there's so much material that is shared, and it's super, super helpful.
Yeah, that sounds great to have it broken down like that. And also just easier, I feel like, to implement and practice when you can think about it in segments instead of just as like this whole overwhelming curriculum almost.
Right, right.
On December 2nd, you'll be teaching emotion regulation, and on January 27th, you'll be teaching interpersonal effectiveness, which you just explained a little bit, but you use an experiential approach in your teaching as well. So, how does that help participants practice the skills for the modules and then practice implementing them?
Yeah. So in terms of, first things first, what is each component? So with emotion regulation skills, as I briefly mentioned, there are so many folks who are not connected to their internal experiences and they don't know how to label their emotions. Some of my clients, their emotional vocabulary consists of good, bad, and weird. So we want to extend, we want to broaden that emotional vocabulary and also just learn the function of emotions and how we experience them. We become very emotion phobic in our society where emotions become intolerable. So we want to learn that, every emotion is information. Emotions are not the enemy. They can be experiences that are tolerable. And how can we use that information to, best inform our interactions and how we walk through life, which is really important. And we also learn about the cycle of emotions, which is a practice that we're going to engage in, an exercise that we're going to do live, because a lot of times these emotions come up and they happen so quickly. And Marcia Lenehan does a really nice job of breaking it down into smaller steps so that we can realize what leads up to the emotion and what happens after the emotion. Because the emotion itself, as I said, it's not the enemy. It's what we add to the emotion and the emotional experience that creates problems and becomes so distressing. So that's a really great exercise that we're going to do in that segment. And for my teaching practice, I like to include experiential exercises, not for forced participation, like everything's an offering, right? Like nobody's forced to do anything, but I think it's really important for us to practice what we teach. 9 times out of 10, folks will engage in a practice and they'll say, oh, that was harder than I thought. We take for granted, we go into sessions, we have these worksheets, we have these exercises, and we ask our clients to do a lot. And sometimes we don't realize how hard some of these exercises really are, even if it looks pretty straightforward on a worksheet. So I think it's really important for us to practice all of these skills. And then in January, when we're doing interpersonal effectiveness skills, this one's a little trickier to practice live because we don't have a partner. And I steer away from breakout sessions, again, because I want to be neuroaffirming. I want to, be inclusive for everyone's learning style and not have what I call forced participation, so to speak. But it's really important for us to internally kind of practice the dialogue of different skills, like a dear man, give and fast, and to know what those skills look like. For interpersonal skills, we are learning how to ask for what you want and how to say no to what you don't want. And that seems really basic, but it's actually really, really hard, especially for folks who've experienced complex trauma, a chronic invalidating environment. That's a skill that really needs a lot of attention. And also, when to let go of relationships when they're no longer serving you. So we talk a lot about limits, boundaries, and, how to stick to our values in terms of relationships. So these segments are super important. And even if folks haven't attended the whole 4-part series, each segment is a standalone, and we can surely benefit from any of them.
That's a beautiful segue into my next question, which is how do they function alone? Like, how can clinicians implement the skills from the unique modules, and how will people feel coming into it kind of at the third module if they haven't attended the other 2?
Yeah, they are standalone segments. So it's not, in terms of DBT skills, the only skill that builds upon other skills is mindfulness. Core mindfulness is at the foundation of everything, but most clinicians are practicing mindfulness anyway. So we're bringing attention to the experience, increasing our awareness, letting go of judgment. So if you have a foundation of that, you're good. Of course, it's super helpful to participate in a whole mindfulness segment, but that's really the only one that's going to be underpinning, all the others. All the other skills are standalone. So if you know nothing about emotion regulation, you can still absolutely benefit from interpersonal effectiveness and vice versa. And for some folks, it's really helpful to be able to pick and choose. I know my clients really, really struggling with interpersonal effectiveness skills. Do I really have to go to all 4, or do I have to go to emotion regulation? So it's nice to be able to have them as standalones. And in that way too, folks can kind of separate them for themselves. Okay, these are my interpersonal effectiveness skills. These are my emotion regulation skills. These are my distress tolerance skills. And they all serve different functions and going to be best suited depending on what's going on in the moment or what the client's looking for. So folks they're not going to be missing anything. They're not going to feel left out. They are standalone training segments. And we do a quick review at the beginning of, why do we use skills? Why are we here? But that's basically it. Just a quick intro, and then we take a deep dive into that skills module. And yeah, I just want folks to know that they're not missing anything. They can absolutely hop in whenever, their schedule aligns. I know we're all busy.
Yeah, we've gotten so many good responses about your DBT series. And I think one of the things that our participants really appreciate about you as an instructor is that you really beautifully blend the holistic and clinical aspects of this work. So I'm very excited. I'm really excited to see your presentation at the conference. That's going to be great.
I'm excited to be there. Yeah, I'm flexible in my approach. As a psychologist, of course, I want the research. I want it to be evidence-based. And it's also really important to me how my client's doing. If they're seeing improvements, then that's fantastic. I'm going to roll with that. It doesn't matter, what the research says. So, being a human being first. I'm so glad that resonates with folks.
All right. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. Again, we're really excited to see you in the near future.
Yeah. See you on December 6th.
Links will be in the description to learn more about Dr. Grechko and sign up for DBT Skills 3, Emotion Regulation, DBT Skills 4, Interpersonal Effectiveness, and our hybrid Holistic Healing through Integrative Medicine conference on December 6th. Check out our links below to keep up with us at the Connecticut Women's Consortium. Thank you for tuning in today, and see you next time.